Hello and welcome to the Leading Lounge. I'm your host, Dr. Justin Dubose. Here in the Leading Lounge, we talk with today's leaders and unpack lessons learned and being learned from a career of leading and communicating in their field. These conversations are designed to be both informal and informative, and we want to equip you with wisdom and tools to empower you as a leader where you are and where you want to be. Hey everybody, welcome to episode 42 of the Leading Lounge. This is our final episode of season 5. And Michael, we saved the best for last. I'll bring you Michael Kandler. Michael's a Chick-Fil-A operator in Alice, Texas, small town outside of Corpus. Originally from Georgia. He goes into his journey and how he kind of found Chick-Fil-A and the opportunities that Chick-Fil-A has offered him, and how he got from being a team member now to an operator of his own store. Michael has a great passion for developing leaders, does a really wonderful job of it, and I've got to experience working with him personally on how thoughtful he is in how he builds a team, how he assembles a team, how he invests into his team, and his desire to see people grow and go beyond even what he has to offer them. So really wonderful way to end this season is with someone who's really on the front end of their leadership journey and still so very passionate about what they're doing. So next season, we're going to take our typical holiday break. Next season, we'll roll out January. We'll have a preview episode January 13th, and then January 20th, we'll start season 6. I hope this season has been a blessing to you. I know this interview with Michael will be. So enjoy it, and we'll see you next year. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the next episode of the Leading Lounge. I got a special guest, Michael Kandler, a Chick-fil-A operator here in the great state of Texas. So, Michael, thanks for joining me and unpacking a little bit about your journey and how you got to Alice. So, I'll just start at the first question. I'll just let you take off and let you introduce yourself that way. But first question I ask everybody is, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your professional journey that got you to where you are today, running a Chick-fil-A in Alice?
Yeah, man. So I'm from Georgia originally. Grew up just like in a suburb of Atlanta, not too far from where you were at, and started work when I was 14. My dad was an entrepreneur. When his business went under, we started doing a lot of like side projects around the house and stuff like that. But then when I turned 14, it was time to get a real job, actual W-2, and the second one was Chick-fil-A. The first one was Kroger, and the difference was just day and night. So seeing the difference between the manager's approaches to the kids there. I mean, I was 14, and I felt like the manager really knew who I was, cared about me. That was not the case at Kroger's, and I was it was pretty eye-opening on what a business could be. Met the operator. He took time with me. I mean, it was a cool spot. So went on to college at the University of Georgia, worked for Chick-fil-A again there. Academia was not my thing. I didn't feel like I was learning the stuff that was going to help me with my career, or stuff that I was really even interested in. A lot of differences between some of the things that I thought were pretty foundational to who I was, between that and the professors I was learning from. So had a hard time getting into it. Re-entered the workforce, became a store manager at GNC, and kind of was doing school part-time, mainly focuses on work. But eventually school was just taking too much money. I was taking on debt. My FAFSA ran out. So it was time to just go really pursue a career. I didn't think GNC was it. So I started pursuing real estate. And I just needed a door to open. And I was doing my real estate license, and I knew I liked sales because of my work at GNC, but I just didn't feel like it was going to be the thing for me. And so I was texting my buddy Tom one time, and I was like, he had graduated from University of Georgia. I had not. And I was just asking, what are you up to these days? Like, where's your career taking you? He was like, man, I'm moving to Texas to work for an operator in McAllen. And I had no idea where McAllen, Texas was. But I looked at it on the map, and it is like right there. I just smack dab on the border. So I was like, man, what is taking you to McAllen, Texas? And he said this operator had a great opportunity to develop leaders that wanted to pursue Chick-fil-A as a career. And I mean, working for a couple of Chick-fil-A's coming up, I knew it was a cool place. I didn't really know the career opportunities of it, like what an operator would look like. But I did a little bit of research, and I texted him. I was like, man, look, would that guy be interested in bringing out any more leaders or talking to me about what that would look like? And Michael Hancock was the operator, and he was gracious enough to give me an interview in a Wendy's in Cumming, Georgia, because he was visiting family. It was the weirdest spot for a Chick-fil-A interview, but it went great. I mean, we hit it off. He kind of gave me his pitch on what his development structure looked like, and I told him a little bit about who I was and what I was passionate about. My dad, being an entrepreneur, I always knew that I wanted to own a business. My dad says, I'm a terrible employee, but I'm a good worker, and that really resonated with me because I liked being the decision maker when I was at the GNC as a store manager, but I still didn't have full autonomy. So I knew I wanted that. And so when hearing Michael talk about the operator gig, it sounded like a great opportunity. And I wasn't wrong. I mean, it was 2 weeks later, I was moving to McAllen, Texas from, North Georgia. Big difference. Met my amazing wife there, Viviana. Michael does a great job of showing everybody that works for him in that development program the ropes of Chick-fil-A, everything from financials, the economics of it, the operations, the systems, what people development looks like, what accountability looks like. And so learned a lot for him, working for him for 2 years, and then went to work for Amanda Esquivel through a spit of luck. She had just moved into the market, and worked for her for 3 years. And that was an incredible opportunity. She was new to being a Chick-fil-A operator, but had a great resume, had a really different approach to leadership than Michael. So I got to kind of learn two sides of what it means to be a good leader, and to work with her for 3 years, and then joined LDP from there. And the rest, and then after 2 years of LDP, I was able to apply for, a year of LDP. And then after being in for 2 years, I was able to get selected for franchisee of Chick-fil-A Alice. So that was the short answer. There's a lot of little stories in there somewhere, but that's the short and sweet.
Yeah, no, that's cool. One thing, so a few episodes, like a few interviews before you, I interviewed another operator. I don't know if it's one of the ones you listen to, Ryan Clopton. He's up in Wisconsin. But we were talking about that one of the things, as him as an insider, me as an outsider, I appreciate about Chick-fil-A is, like you mentioned, going to college and, not graduating from UGA and then becoming an operator, is that so many paths seem to like shove you into this higher education thing, which really is not for everybody. And so one of the things I really appreciate about Chick-fil-A and trying to pass on to my kids is like, hey, if you can find Chick-fil-A or a company like that, you don't have to take on 6 figures of college debt and get your master's degree in something useless. You can just go start working.
Yeah. And don't call me a sellout, but I did eventually graduate from South Texas College. It's a community college down there. And I mean, the reason being is, because I got into the program without my degree. That's a question I get a lot, is like, how did you get in without a degree? And I was like, I really don't feel like that's what they should be focusing on. It's like, why didn't you get a degree in order to improve your candidacy to get in? And so I think if you're looking at an application and you got to check some boxes and academia might not be for you, I think there's a lot of different things that people don't think are important to them, but they still improve candidacy. And why not just hunker down and do the thing? I mean, I think 10 years ago, me would be really upset with that answer or that statement, because they're like, it doesn't matter. Like, you're learning ecology right now. Why do you need this to be a business owner? But I think it shows self-discipline. It does show that you can finish something. If you have a great story about starting your own business or something like that offsets the degree, that's great. But I didn't. I mean, I worked Chick-fil-A. I mean, I was a store manager, but really, other than that, I didn't have a resume that was going to get me, that showed self-discipline, that showed that I could close stuff out, until I got that degree. So I just, check the box. I tell people, but if you can't, that's fine. I mean, Chick-fil-A does tell you don't need a degree, but if you're going against the same person with the same story, with the same resume that has a degree, I mean,
right.
We can't blame Chick-fil-A for picking them. So
yeah, why not make yourself a better, more competitive candidate?
Yeah. But don't give them the opportunity to not pick you.
Yeah, sure. But yeah, that is one thing I have appreciated about Chick-fil-A is it's not like a prerequisite. They allow you to still compete.
100%.
Even though that. So, all right. So one of the things the more I learn about it, the more I really value about Chick-fil-A is the way they do their leadership development. So like you mentioned, working for a couple operators, having that whole thing, and then you go into this LDP, the pipeline leadership development program. So when I interview operators, one of the questions I love to ask is, what was that process like, that whole LDP process? What was most beneficial for you looking back, like now that you're an operator? What would you say going through that whole process was most helpful for Michael, the operator, like preparing you to actually run your own store?
Uh, so I've got a lot of opinions on LDP. All of them are good, but one of them is that people go into it for different reasons. Some people go into LDP really trying to figure out, do they want to be an operator? Do they want to go staff? For me, I knew going into LDP that it was a candidacy play. I felt confident in myself. It's my personality type. Um, but the but I felt like I could compete. I could be a great operator. I just needed something that would boost my candidacy to make me competitive for it. And LDP was a place where I could build that story, where I could be faced with really difficult situations and show that I can handle them. So just for me, LDP was most beneficial because it was an opportunity to build a story, to opportunity to prove myself to Chick-fil-A, network, and build candidacy. For other people, I mean, there's a lot of leadership lessons I learned along the way. I learned my communication skills went up like tenfold. I learned new systems for Chick-fil-A, how to hire really improved during Chick-fil-A and all these different cultures. Like going from New Jersey to California and then Oklahoma City, those are three
I'm
very different
sure.
markets. Learning how to hire inside of all those markets is really valuable. So that wherever I ended up as an operator, I knew I was going to be able to navigate the selection or the hiring process and build a team that was going to be able to do Chick-fil-A the way I wanted them to do it. So that was great, but overall, if I had to pick one thing, it's the ability to build candidacy for selection was huge.
Yeah. So not in your case, not one particular like skill. It's just kind of the whole portfolio that helps you as you're going through
Yeah, I
LDP.
mean, I think a lot of my skills I learned from. I mean, not to say you don't learn a ton of things in LDP, but a lot of them I learned from Michael Hancock and Amanda Esquivel working for them, and it was a rough structure of what my leadership approach was, but um, Chick and LDP rounded those things out. We talked about communication, we talked about hiring, we talked about systems. It rounded those things out, but I had a base knowledge of those things. Like I was doing hiring for Amanda, I was doing hiring for Michael, I was building systems for them. And that's why they're such great operators. They gave me the autonomy to do that. A lot of people don't have that going into the program, especially these days. Um, they're selecting leaders inside of restaurants that might be kitchen directors. They're not always executive directors that are having a holistic approach to the business.
Right.
Now they're great leaders, but they really need to learn different aspects of the business. That I was an executive director for several years before that, so I had those base skills that were able to be smoothed out by LDP.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So you come out of LDP, you get in the coop, you find out you're going to Alice, you take over, the store, whatever the terminology is. And you've been there now. Have you been there a year yet?
December 7th will be here. I moved here last month, a year ago last month, but we opened
Okay.
December 7th. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So you're getting this question like just shy of 1 year of actually running the store. So if present day Michael, like you mentioned, your college answer would be totally unsatisfactory to the Michael of 10 years ago. But if the Michael who's now running his own store and got his own company and you've been doing it now for a little while, if you could go back and visit with the Michael who's starting LDP, like as opposed to now you're entering training, but now you're actually doing it, what would you tell the Michael of whatever that was 3 or 4 years ago?
Um, trust the process for sure would be one thing, and I think really focus on the relationships you're building in the program. You meet some incredible people that live in a ton of different places, have a ton of different backgrounds. You get a really diverse, you know, breadth of knowledge and breadth of interactions. Working people that you just never would have the opportunity to work with. I mean, working in South Texas, you work with a lot of different people, but I mean, generally they're from the same area. They have similar characteristics. They're similar culture. I mean, going in LDP, you meet a ton of different people, and I think really valuing those relationships and I wish I would have probably poured into those relationships a little bit more. It's hard when you're on the road. I mean, you meet people for 3 weeks, 6 weeks sometimes, and that's it. So it's difficult, and I'm not the best at keeping in touch. A lot of my friends from Georgia would tell you the same thing. That I mean, it's just I'm hard to stay in touch with, but I need to get better at that. And I think if I could go back and tell LDP me that, it'd be helpful. I think you could really focus on the relationships, and everything's not a candidacy play. It's important, but really, really make more time for that. Now, to be fair, going through LDP, I'm not sure I would have been receptive to it. I was in school. I graduated when I was in LDP. We got our first kid when I was in LDP.
Yeah.
There was a lot of life happening, and trying to drink life through that fire hose. You don't really you want to add more water, but if I could have added more water, that would have been where I put that energy for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other thing probably too is you probably wouldn't have got to the point where that would be your advice to your younger self had you not gone through the fire hose process. So, you have
Yeah,
different seasons that prepare you for different things. And but it
yeah,
is good to know. And it's one question I like asking people who've been through a really rigorous process is like, hey, other person coming through, like maybe pay attention to these things, even though it is going to be challenging. It's going to be, what you need to
and
hold on.
my advice for other people is very different than the advice I would have given me, because I think I had the right approach to LDP. The advice I give to other people is really focus on your candidacy. I feel like
Right.
sometimes people get lost in the development side of it, and it's good to want to develop and learn, and that needs to be a part of it 100%. But they lose sight that you're building candidacy. You're here for a reason. I tell my leader, I've got a executive director here. She's going to apply for LDP in December, and I tell her all the time, like, LDP is not the goal. Operator is the goal. LDP is a step towards
Right.
that. And you get lost in, like, well, I'm an LDP now. I get to really just learn and develop and interact. And those are good things, but do them in a way that makes you more competitive for operator, because it's a really
Right.
challenging process. They have a lot of opportunity. They have a lot of applications, and you got to make yourself stand out. It's a tough thing to do.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. It's still, even though it feels like you've arrived, it's still the means to an end that you haven't
Right.
haven't got to yet. So cool. So let me ask you this question. Focuses of the podcast are on leadership broadly and communication more specifically. So regardless of people's background, so like just this season of the podcast, it's been you. It's been a guy who was a vice president for a denomination, military, like a former military boss of mine, a colonel, and so all these different backgrounds. But I love asking people about communication.
Yeah,
So
I'll be honest. I was listening to your podcast more. I was like, man, why am I here? these guys have been doing some stuff. And
well,
so yeah,
I,
they were really good to listen to, and there was some really good advice in them. I actually learned a lot. I'm excited to talk to you more about them next time we catch up. But yeah,
yeah, well, good.
sorry,
So
go ahead.
my goal, and I mentioned this like before I started this particular season, was I wanted to get this spread of people, some of whom have been doing it forever, and then some of whom, like you, are still relatively on the front end of it. So that's the why. But and you do have a lot to add. So anyway, communication. So I have a theory, which is that people can identify more with your failures than your successes, because everybody knows what failure feels like, and some people feel like they've never won, they haven't had any success. So with communication specifically, tell me about a time you failed at communicating, what you learned from it, and was something in that like failure and growth process, did it change how you communicated after that?
Yeah, and this one's not really through a communication channel. I think, man, time I failed. So I think I did a bad job early on, and I still do. I mean, I still need to work on this. I think there's some communication, something that people work on their entire lives. But setting clear expectations, regardless of the communication channel, regardless of how you're communicating it, it needs to be clear. Sometimes I take for granted that people have the same thought process that I do, and if they see a situation, they're going to come to the same conclusion. And so I need to do a better job of letting people know that this is my conclusion and my expectation is around that conclusion. And and those I need to make those expectations clear. So I, yeah, that's kind of that's the short and sweet of it. I mean, I'm trying to think of an individual time. We talked about one of my directors here. I mean, creating job descriptions that aren't really there's no nuance to them. So if you're going to set expectations around, we'll talk about Chick-fil-A thing like food costs. What's the metric you're tracking? Using SMART goals. Those are the types of things that create clear expectations, and just constantly improving it, doing a better job of getting as clear as possible is
Yeah.
something that, not the best at.
Yeah. So did you learn that on your way up to being an operator? Like, were you on the receiving end of bad expectations, or you're obviously they're learning certain things
Oh,
about
that's a
the
good question. Yeah.
operator in the store, as far as
Um,
the one who needs to give them. But have you ever been on the receiving end?
I've certainly been on the receiving end of bad expectations. Yeah, where I didn't really know what my job was. It's in Chick-fil-A, especially when you're being developed, you're put into a lot of different roles and quickly. I mean, I worked for Michael Hancock for 2 years and had I don't know, probably 7 or 8 different roles.
Yeah.
Really, trying to just get as much Chick-fil-A knowledge as you can. And so we're inevitably navigating 7 or 8 roles in 2 years. You're going to have miscues on expectations. I think some of that was honestly on me, where I wasn't reaching out to figure out what is your expectation. I mean, I thrive on autonomy. Like we talked about, I'm probably not the best employee, and so taking the first step in finding out what other people's expectations of me are was something I didn't do very well. I just assumed this is the right thing to do, and I'm going to go do it, and that's what's best for the business. But yeah, being on the receiving end of it was eye opening. However, I think being on the giving end of it is even more so because you can start to feel I feel like I have a decent pulse on the people that work with me and for me, and what you can feel it when somebody is just a little bit insecure about what you want from them, and you can start to taste that resentment. And so getting on the front end of that and seeing is fine, but I really hate when that happens. So that is the part where it was really eye opening at LDP, especially. I think it was in New Jersey, and I did a transition where, I mean, Chick-Fil-A stuff here, but it was like a $6 million restaurant, and it had like 30 people. The operator had retired. It was a challenging assignment, and creating an organizational chart there or an organizational structure where I can disconnect from the business a little bit so that I can take care of my 6-week-old kid, help my wife a little bit, was tough. I mean, I needed somebody that could close. I needed somebody that could open. And there's a lot of expectations that go into opening and closing a restaurant, being trusted with the keys to a business, making sure that Chick-fil-A is being done in the way that I want it to be done, or at least minimal standards are being met. And there's a lot to that. So trying to draw that on paper is challenging. And then I could see gaps in my opening leader where, like, she didn't really focus on cleanliness, or she didn't think that she thought that a 10-minute wait on biscuits was, normal. And that's just not normal for me. And so I really had to make sure that she understood what does success look like at a Chick-fil-A for me when you're opening. And then trying to communicate that graciously was important. Yeah. And you could,
Yeah, no, that's great. There's a phrase I picked up somewhere along the way that I use all the time with people, but it's I'll generalize it, but it's basically like if there's a mist in you, then there's a fog in everyone else. It's like if you're not quite clear, then it's going to be super cloudy, by the time it gets to other people. So, no, it's great stuff. So you mentioned, giving advice to the younger Michael to kind of focus in on relationships more. So relationship specific question, last question I got is, in your journey, if you think back on the entirety of your journey, would you say is the most beneficial relationship you've made specifically to developing you as a leader? And what about that particular person or that connection made such a huge difference for you?
Yeah. So one name really stands out to me. Anthony Giles he's a transition lead at Chick-fil-A. We worked together when I was going through the grand opening supervisor stage of leadership at LDP. And I was on my second opening. He was on his second opening. And we've talked about, and for context, we've talked about how much I cared about candidacy. And when you care about your candidacy, you care a lot about people's perception of you, more so than being transparent. And that's a huge problem in the program is inauthenticity, because people are so you're drinking from a Chick-fil-A cup right now?
I am. Yeah, I was prepared for this.
That's awesome. Oh man. Anyways, I was on this, and so that's a real problem in the program is inauthenticity, because the participants care so much about what people think of them that they stop being themselves genuinely. And it's an important piece of navigating selection is being genuine. So there's a disconnect there. And anyways, back to Anthony, this guy, he was transition lead for his first opening, was my second opening. I was green. I didn't really know how to do it well. I was the lead on this opening. I was still figuring out what the grand opening supervisor side even looks like. It's very different from the interim manager side, where you're taking over restaurants. You're doing kind of stuff you're used to, leading restaurants with relative autonomy. GOS, you're serving another operator. So you're kind of back to that. You're not an employee of the operator, but you're certainly serving them and trying to do your best to achieve their goals. And so really new to me, not my strength. And Anthony he was such a genuine person. And he cared so much about being a genuine thought partner that, within our first 2 meetings, I was like, man, I can really be transparent with this guy. And he became just such an incredible accountability partner, thought partner. He made sure that he showed care in a way that I thought was just incredible. He was engaged. And so he not only gave me an example of the type of leader that I would want to be to my people, but he did a really good job of improving my quality of life and improving my success in that opening. And then we ended up staying in touch. Well, we're still in touch, but we ended up working together on several openings, ones that we weren't even technically on together. I would call him for advice and be like, what is your thought on this? Where are we at on what's the program's approach to this? And then I could really be transparent and vulnerable with him to make sure he understood where I was nervous about myself navigating those situations. So yeah, he really stands out. Obviously, my wife also is an great accountability partner. That's something you really need as an operator. I trust everybody that works with me on my executive team here, but you're still the operator. I mean, they're not going to tell you everything. They're certainly not going to tell you when they think you're failing on a small level. They'll wait till it gets big, and then they'll kind of be like, "Hey, we need to talk about this." And that hasn't happened yet. But I know that there's small things that they might be frustrated with me on. They might not tell me every time. So you need accountability partners. That's why you need leadership coaches. That's why you need people like Anthony and Viviana that they'll keep you humble, but they'll do it in a way where you remain confident and you know what the next right thing to do is. So yeah, he really stands out.
Yeah, no, that's good. I have a formula I came up with. I think I came up with it anyway. If I stole it from someone, I don't give them credit or recognize who they are or remember where I got it. But anyway, is that good leadership development is you get the right tools and the right processes, the right systems and all that, plus the right relationships. So, a lot of people I think go, hey, we built this thing and that's what will crank out leaders. But you really need the Anthonys or somebody that can kind of meet you where you are, understand what makes you, and then help you go, hey, man, I think, all you're missing here or all that you need to add or all that you need to kind of do differently is this and this and this, and you'll be ready to go. So I think, a lot of people rely on kind of impersonal systems or processes or tools or resources or something. But yeah, it's when you find the Anthonys or especially the Vivianas that are like, hey, you can do it. Come on, I'll help you.
Those Chick-fil-A ships, man, every now and then they turn out all right. So yeah, I was very, very grateful for her. It was a big one.
Yeah. Well, for what it's worth, you mentioned, like, why am I on this podcast with all these other people? So I brag on you all the time as somebody who's still pretty new in their role, but does a great job of being really thoughtful about how they're doing it, genuinely cares about people and not just results. And then the results are better because the people that, work for you know that you care about them. So anyway, I brag on you every chance I get, as far as, it's easy for older folks to just throw shade at younger folks as being whatever they are. But for your age and what you're doing and how long you've been doing it, you're doing a fantastic job. So,
well, I appreciate that. Yeah, we've got on our, I think you noticed, but on our job descriptions, we put our value lens, and I think there's a lot of organizations. I work for a couple of them that they focus a ton on the results, the metrics, and those are great things to strive for, like next profit goal, next promotion, next sales metric. But when it comes at the expense of character and culture, it's just it's just such a toxic place to work. And then on the other side of that, you get really high character people. They love what they do, but they don't necessarily care about constantly improving the business. And then you get these really complacent places. So we try to avoid complacency and we try to avoid toxicity. And it's a challenge, man.
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be easier than it was, but so it's humbling. But it is certainly my focus, and I get a lot of. I need to get better at it if it's something that I think I like so much. But developing people and putting them on to their next step is a really cool process to watch. I'm super excited for Amanda, my executive director, to apply for LDP, and it's just been really rewarding, kind of navigating that through that. So I appreciate you saying that. I'm definitely working on it. But you've also been a huge help. So I appreciate you having me on here.
Yeah, man. Yeah, and appreciate you guys for listening. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.